My name is Talia Grayson. I'm 33 years old. And 4 months ago, I thought I knew exactly what my life would look like by this time next year. I thought I'd be standing in a white dress under a string of overpriced fairy lights, saying vows I'd rewritten 6 times to make them sound both casual and profound. My parents would be crying. His parents would be pretending not to. Our friends would be drunk on champagne and sentiment. Instead, I'm sitting alone in an apartment that suddenly feels too quiet, replaying one sentence in my head until it sounds like it belongs to someone else's life. Stop introducing me as your future wife. It makes me look like I settled. Daniel didn't whisper it. He didn't say it in a half-joking tone you could misinterpret if you were feeling fragile. He said it in the car, on the highway, with that tight, controlled irritation that tells you this isn't a thought that just showed up tonight. It's been living in his head for a while. If you'd asked me a year ago to describe us, I would have said we were solid. Not some epic, cinematic love story, just good, steady, real. We met when I was 30, and he was 31 at a financial compliance seminar, which is really just a glamorous way of saying a mandatory work thing with bad coffee. I work in risk management at a mid-size firm. Daniel's a corporate lawyer. He made a joke about how the pastries tasted like legal liability. I laughed harder than the joke deserved. We were the last 2 people in the room that day, him finishing an email on his laptop, me pretending to look busy so I wouldn't have to make small talk with my manager in the hallway. He asked if I wanted to grab a drink to debrief the trauma. I said yes. We were one of those couples that made sense on paper. 2 professionals, decent incomes, similar backgrounds, similar ideas about wanting marriage and kids. Eventually. Not now. We moved in together after a year, got engaged last spring, set a wedding date for next October. For a long time, I thought we were on the same page. Then, a few months ago, the page started to feel like it had fine print I hadn't noticed. It started small, little comments, little shifts. "You've been in that role a while, haven't you?" he'd say, scrolling through his phone. "Don't you want to aim higher?" Or, "My friend Mark just made partner at 35. His wife's already a VP at her firm. Power couple." He always said it like an observation, like weather. Not a criticism, not directly. But when someone you love keeps bringing up the forecast, eventually you start wondering if they're telling you to carry an umbrella. I make good money, not post my bonus on Instagram money, but solid. I like my work-life balance. I like finishing my day and not needing to check my email at midnight. For me, that felt like success. For Daniel, apparently, it started to feel like dead air. 3 weeks ago, we went to his friend Vanessa's engagement party. Rooftop, rented lighting, a flower wall people lined up to take pictures in front of. The kind of party where everyone's casually discussing vacation homes and equity packages. When we walked in, he squeezed my hand a little too tightly, the way he does when he's in networking mode. We made the rounds. When we reached a group of people he clearly wanted to impress, I smiled and did what I always do. "Hi, I'm Talia, and this is my fiancé Daniel." Polite, simple, true. Later, on the drive home, the air in the car felt heavier than it should have for a night that had gone fine. "Can you not do that?" he said suddenly. I watched the blur of streetlights in the window. "Do what? Introduce me like that." "Like what? As your fiancé?" He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "It just sounds weird, like you're making some big announcement. I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable." "We are engaged," I said quietly. "Is it weird to say what's true?" He sighed. "I'm just saying you don't have to lead with it every time." "Okay, it feels like you're trying to claim something in front of people." Claim something. At the time, I told myself he was tired. The party had been long. He'd had 2 whiskeys on an empty stomach. I let it go. I wish that had been the only time. 2 nights ago, we had dinner with some of his colleagues and old law school friends. A long table, dim lighting, the kind of place where the waiters top up your wine before you're even finished. Someone asked how we met. The story came out easily. I'd told it enough times it felt like a script. When they asked how long we'd been together, I smiled. 3 years, I said. And this is my future husband. We're getting married next October. The table went briefly quiet. Just a second. People smiled. Someone said, "Congratulations." Conversation moved on, but across from me, Daniel's face had gone tight, like a muscle pulled too far. He didn't say anything during dinner. He laughed at the right places, told a story about.
We got into the car and he shut the door harder than necessary. The sound cracked through the quiet like a warning shot. "I asked you not to do that," he said. "Do what?" My voice came out careful, even though I already knew. "Introduce me like that, as your future husband." I blinked. "That's literally what you are." He didn't look at me. "It makes me look like I settled." The words landed in my chest, cold and blunt, like I'd walked into a room that wasn't meant for me. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. What? Like I couldn't do better," he snapped. "Like I just picked someone convenient. When you say it like that in front of my colleagues, it highlights the fact that you're not." He stopped, jaw clenching. "Not what?" My voice sounded thin even to me. He stared out at the road. "Not on the same level as my friends' partners. They're marrying doctors, executives, entrepreneurs. You're comfortable. You've been in the same role for years. You're good at what you do, but you're not ambitious like them." There it was, the fine print, finally in bold. "So introducing you as my future husband," I said quietly, "makes you look like you settled." "You're twisting my words." "I'm repeating them back to you." He exhaled hard. "You're taking it out of context. All I'm saying is you don't need to be so public about it. My colleagues talk. They compare. When you say it like that, it draws attention to the fact that you're not decorative enough," I cut in, "successful enough, impressive enough to be on your arm without lowering your stock price." "Talia," he warned. Something in me went very still. For 3 years, I'd been measuring myself by this man's approval without fully realizing it, adjusting, softening, laughing off little digs because I told myself he didn't mean them. And now I was staring straight at the unvarnished version. "You think being engaged to me makes you look like you settled?" I said. "You think I make you look bad?" He didn't say yes. He didn't have to. He just went quiet in the driver's seat, swallowed hard, and kept his eyes on the road. We drove home like strangers. He went to bed after muttering that he was exhausted and didn't want to fight. I sat on the couch in the dark, my phone face down on the coffee table, the silence ticking louder than any clock. I didn't cry. That surprised me. Instead, something inside me clicked into place. Not anger, not yet. Clarity. If I stayed, this would be my life. Constantly auditioning for the role of impressive enough, knowing the director had already decided I was miscast. After about 2 hours, I picked up my laptop. First, I opened the shared calendar where Daniel had dumped every event we were supposedly attending over the next few months. Wedding showers, firm galas, birthday dinners, brunches with his inner circle. Every place he wanted to parade me when it suited him. At each one, my name sat there as his +1, his accessory. I opened my email and, one by one, sent polite messages to the hosts I knew. "Hi, unfortunately, I won't be able to attend. I'm so sorry for the late notice. I hope the event goes wonderfully." I didn't mention Daniel. I didn't explain. I just quietly removed myself from his narrative. Then I did something else. I opened a new message and scrolled to a contact I rarely initiated conversation with. Melissa Hart, Daniel's best friend since college. The one person in his circle who had ever asked me how I was doing and actually waited for the answer. "Hey Melissa, it's Talia. Do you have a minute to talk about Sunday's brunch?" She responded almost immediately. "Sure. Everything okay?" "Not even close." We ended up on a call near midnight, my voice low as I told her exactly what Daniel had said. I expected her to defend him, to tell me I was overreacting. She didn't. "Oh my God," she said instead. "He actually used the word settled?" His exact phrase was, "Stop introducing me as your future wife. It makes me look like I settled." There was a long, furious silence on her end. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. By the time we hung up, the plan was simple. Sunday's brunch was at Daniel's favorite restaurant. Bottomless mimosas, reclaimed wood tables, the works. Melissa would get there early. She'd asked the staff to place an envelope at Daniel's seat before anyone else arrived. Inside that envelope, he'd find a letter I would write, and a printed confirmation from the venue we'd booked for our wedding. Cancellation confirmed. By the time I finally went to bed, Daniel was snoring softly beside me, blissfully unaware that his life had just quietly shifted on its axis. He thought tomorrow would be more of the same. I stared at the ceiling in the dark and thought, no, tomorrow you find out I'm not something you settle for. On Sunday morning, the apartment felt unnaturally quiet, like even the walls were waiting to see what would happen. Daniel moved around the bedroom with the stiff, brittle energy of someone pretending everything was fine. He ironed his shirt twice, changed his watch, checked the mirror too many times. Maybe he sensed something was off. Maybe guilt whispers even when you refuse to listen.
I stayed in the kitchen, sipping coffee I barely tasted. He kept glancing at me, waiting for me to say I'd changed my mind about coming to brunch. "Are you sure you're not going?" he finally asked. "Yes." He exhaled sharply, like my calmness irritated him more than anger would have. "Can we please not make this a spectacle?" he muttered. "My friends are going to think something's wrong." I took another sip. Something is wrong. He froze for a second, but he didn't push. He grabbed his keys from the counter. "I'll see you later." "Maybe," I said. He blinked. What does that mean? I just looked at him, steady and unreadable. After a moment, he shook his head and walked out. When the door clicked shut behind him, the quiet wrapped around me like the inside of a cocoon. I sat at the table with my coffee and let myself breathe. Deep, slow, grounding. Today wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity, delivered in the one place Daniel cared most about, his social circle. A notification buzzed on my phone. "Melissa. He's here. They just seated him. The envelope is in place." I stared at the screen, my heartbeat steady. Me. "Okay, thank you." A minute passed, then another. Then my phone lit up like a siren. Daniel calling. I watched it ring, let it ring out. It buzzed again, and again. Then the texts started. "What is this? Talia, answer your phone. Tell me this is a mistake. Did you seriously cancel the venue? Pick up now." I turned my phone face down. 20 minutes later, the front door slammed so hard it hit the wall. Daniel stormed inside, an envelope crushed in his fist, his face a mess of humiliation, shock, and fury. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, holding up the papers like evidence in a trial. I stayed seated at the table. "It's exactly what it looks like. You canceled the wedding venue without talking to me?" I met his eyes, calm. "You said introducing you as my future husband makes you look like you settled. I decided to solve that problem." His mouth fell open. "Are you out of your mind? You blindsided me in front of everyone." I walked in and they were all, "God, Talia." Melissa was staring at me like I'd been exposed. "Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" I raised an eyebrow. "Humiliation? That's what you're worried about?" He paced, dragging a hand through his hair. "You ambushed me." "You ambushed me," I said quietly. "You told me being engaged to me makes you look like you settled. What exactly should I have done? Pretended that was normal? Kept smiling while you chipped away at me piece by piece? You took one careless comment and blew up our entire life." "Daniel, it wasn't one comment. Don't rewrite history." I stood slowly. "You've been making digs for months about my job, my ambition, my value to you. That's not fair." "What's not fair," I said, steady, "is being with someone who sees me as a downgrade." He flinched. "It wasn't like that. I was stressed. Work's been crazy. I said things badly." "No, I cut in gently but firmly. You said things honestly. That's what bothers you, not the words, the fact that I finally believe them. His anger dissolved into panic. Talia, we're engaged. You can't just end things over a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said. It was clarity. I walked to the counter, opened the drawer, and took out the small velvet ring box I'd placed there the night before. I set it on the table between us. He stared at it like it was a live grenade. I'm done, I said softly. I'm not marrying someone who's embarrassed to be with me. Please don't do this, not like this. You did this, I replied. The moment you decided, I made you look like you settled. Silence stretched thick between us. Finally, he sank into a chair, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. I didn't mean it. You meant it enough to say it twice. That shut him up. I need you to pack a bag and stay somewhere else for a few days, I said. We'll figure out logistics later. Are you really ending this? I already did. The fight left him all at once. I'll go to my sister's, he muttered. Okay. I listened to drawers open and close, the scrape of a zipper. When he came back with his suitcase, he paused at the door. Talia, please don't do this, he said, voice breaking. I didn't answer. Because if I did, if I cracked even a fraction, he would use that softness to pull me back into the same cycle. So I stayed still, and after a long moment, he stepped outside. The door closed behind him, and for the first time in months, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like peace. What followed didn't feel empty. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in months. When the silence settled, I realized how loud my own heartbeat was. I didn't move for a long time. The suitcase wheels had barely finished echoing down the hallway when my phone buzzed again. Daniel. Talia, please, can we just talk? I didn't mean it like that. Another message followed. I'm freaking out. Please answer. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, then set my phone face down and walked to the window. The city outside looked unchanged. Cars moved, people crossed the street, somewhere a dog barked. It felt vaguely offensive that the world hadn't paused for what had just detonated inside my life. An hour later, he called. I let it go to voicemail. By evening, the tone of his messages shifted. You're overreacting. You blindsided me at brunch. Do you have any idea how that made me look? There it was again, how he looked, not how I felt. I powered my phone off and went to bed alone for the first time in 3 years. Morning brought that strange, nauseous clarity that follows a big decision. For a few seconds after I woke up, I forgot. Then I rolled over and saw the empty side of the bed, the dent in the pillow, and memory rushed back like cold water. I made coffee, opened my laptop, pulled up a blank document. There's a difference between ending a relationship and disentangling a life. The first can happen in a sentence. The second requires paperwork. By 10 a.m., I was on the phone with a lawyer a coworker had recommended. We'd combined accounts, co-signed the lease, paid deposits for the venue and caterer. Nothing as complicated as a divorce, but messy enough. I know it feels overwhelming, the lawyer said gently after I stumbled through the summary, but it's good you're doing this before any legal marriage documents, property, or kids are involved. That sentence landed like a delayed explosion. Before marriage, before kids, before locking myself into a life where I was always walking 3 steps behind a man who was ashamed to be seen with me. We went through the practicalities. My name on what, his name on what could be separated now, what would take time. After the call, I sat in the quiet apartment, legal pads spread across the table, and felt something unexpected. Relief. Not joy. Not yet. Just the sense that I'd stepped off a train that had been heading somewhere I didn't want to end up. Around lunchtime, my phone lit up again. An unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail, then answered on impulse. Hello, Talia? Dear, it's Helen, Daniel's mom. My stomach dipped. Hi, Helen. She exhaled shakily. Daniel called us last night, in pieces. He said you ended the engagement, that you canceled the venue. I did, I said. Can you tell me why? Her voice softened. He says you overreacted to something he said, that you embarrassed him in front of his friends. Of course he did. Did he tell you what he said? I asked. A pause. He said he made an insensitive comment, that it came out wrong. I let out a quiet, humorless laugh. That's a very generous summary. Talia, what did he say? She asked gently. I closed my eyes, hearing it again, word for word. He told me to stop introducing him as my future husband because it makes him look like he's settled. Silence. He said it after I introduced him to his colleagues, and it wasn't the first time. He's been making comments for months about my job, my ambition, how I compare to his friends' partners. Another silence, heavier. Oh, she said finally. Oh, Talia. Her voice thickened. He actually used the word settled? Yes, those were his exact words. Oh, sweetheart. There was a low, angry sound under her breath. That's not okay. That's not how you talk about someone you're supposed to marry. Something in my chest tightened. Of all the responses I'd imagined from his mother, this wasn't one of them. He's been making me feel like I'm not enough for months, I admitted. Like I'm a downgrade. I'm not going to walk down an aisle towards someone who feels that way about me. I don't blame you, she said quietly. I'm so sorry, Talia. I don't know what's gotten into him. He's lost perspective. Tears burned unexpectedly. Thank you, I whispered. After a moment, she asked, carefully, do you think there's any chance you could work through this? Counseling, maybe? No, I said, surprised by how steady I sounded. He didn't make one mistake. He showed me who he is when it comes to me. I believe him. She exhaled. I understand. I may not like it, but I understand. And for what it's worth, we love you. We always have. You've been good to him. Better than he deserved, apparently. That's when the first tear finally escaped. We talked a little longer. She said she'd speak to him. Not to fix it, she knew she couldn't, but to make him see what he'd done. I didn't ask for details. That was their relationship to untangle. When we hung up, the apartment was quiet again. But this time, the quiet felt clean, like a reset. The next few weeks blurred into logistics and emotional whiplash. Daniel cycled through every reaction possible in my messages. First, anger. You had no right to cancel the venue. Do you know how much money we lost? You made me look pathetic. Then, defensiveness. It came out wrong. You're twisting what I meant. No one else would throw away 3 years over one sentence. And finally, desperation. I'm sorry. I'm seeing a therapist. I know I've been obsessed with status. Please give me a chance to prove I don't think you're beneath me. That message made me put my phone down and walk around the block. When I did respond, I kept it simple. I heard you the first time. I believe you meant it. We are done. Please respect that. He never really did. The brunch incident rippled through his friend group like a dropped stone. Melissa kept me updated in short, blunt texts. For the record, I told him exactly what he said to you. I told him you didn't embarrass him. He embarrassed himself. And in the quiet spaces between those messages, something inside me kept settling. Not grief, not rage, but resolve. I hadn't lost a future. I'd stepped out of one that would have slowly erased me. He embarrassed himself the moment he decided his fiancé wasn't good enough for the version of himself he wanted the world to see. Later, she told me some of his friends thought I'd gone too far, that canceling the venue, that handing him the letter at brunch, was nuclear, too dramatic, too final. Others, quieter, more honest, admitted they'd heard it before, those little comments he made. Jokes about how I wasn't as driven as the other wives-to-be, how I seemed too content in a way that unsettled him. Funny how clarity always shows up after the damage is done. About 3 weeks after he moved out, Daniel came by to talk logistics. Practical separation, he called it. We sat at the dining table like coworkers, reviewing a project that had failed. He looked thinner, tired. Shadows lived under his eyes now. I found a place, he said. I move in next month. Okay, I said. We talked through leases, utilities, wedding deposits, numbers, losses, what was already gone. When we reached the non-refundable costs, he picked up the pen. "I'll cover this," he said, signing his name. "You shouldn't have to pay for it." I studied him. "It was my decision to cancel, Daniel. I'll split it." He shook his head. His jaw tightened. "No, you're right about one thing. I cared more about how you made me look than how you felt. The least I can do is take the financial hit." For just a second, I saw him. The man I fell in love with. The one who stayed up all night with me when my dad was in the hospital. The one who made grilled cheese at 2 a.m. when I came home wrecked after a brutal week. If he'd shown up like that sooner, before the performance, before the invisible audience, maybe we'd still be planning a wedding instead of an ending. But he hadn't. And once you see something clearly, you can't unsee it. A few days later, an envelope arrived. My name, his handwriting, no return address. I knew it wasn't paperwork. Inside was a letter, handwritten, messy, uneven, intimate in a way his typed messages never were. He wrote about growing up in a house where image was currency, parents obsessed with appearances, a father who measured worth in titles and square footage, a mother who treated perfection like armor. He wrote about how he learned that being impressive meant being safe, and how part of that performance was having a partner who fit a certain picture. "You were never not enough," he wrote. "I made you feel that way because I was terrified that if my life didn't look perfect, people would see how small I feel inside." He admitted he compared me to his friends' partners not because I fell short, but because he decided they represented success, an invisible checklist he kept measuring his life against. "I put all of that on you," he wrote. "I made you carry my insecurity. I'm sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix it. I know it doesn't erase what I said, but I see it now." The envelope ended with hope, tempered by acceptance. If there was any part of me that believed we could rebuild something healthier, he would try. If not, he would respect it. I deserved someone who saw my worth from the beginning. I read it twice. Then I folded it back along its creases and put it in a drawer. Not because it meant nothing, but because it didn't change the truth. He hadn't become someone new. He'd just finally recognized who he'd been all along, and I had finally decided I deserved better. Life gets small after something ends. Boxes, signatures, closed accounts. 1 month after he moved out, the last joint balance disappeared. The last wedding we fund came through. That was the moment it felt real. Not tragic, just final. 2 lives that had touched, then cleanly separated. For the first time in weeks, I woke up without the knot in my stomach. I made coffee, watered the plants, opened the windows. The air felt lighter. I wasn't happy yet, but I wasn't hurting anymore, and that was enough to begin. Slowly, my life widened again. I reconnected with friends who loved me without conditions, without needing me to be impressive or polished or strategic. I said yes to spontaneous dinners, to slow mornings, to conversations that stretched past midnight. I went back to hiking, took a pottery class, started reading real books again, went rock climbing with a coworker who swore it helped anxious people. She was right.